Next up, I am very proud and have the honor of introducing my mentee, Liem. He is the founder of the first ever mental health conference for A Success, which I'm very proud that he created because there is definitely something that we need within our generation. He is an upcoming freshman attending VCU and studying psychology. Go Rams. And I'm sorry. And we cannot wait to see the rest of the mental health conference and what he has created for these past couple months. So everybody, please welcome Liem Nguyen.
Can everyone hear me okay? Thank you. Thank you, Christina and Liem. I would like to start things off by letting you all know that what is about to be discussed are sensitive topics surrounding my experiences with mental illness. I'm going to be talking about suicidal thoughts and self-harm. If at any point you feel like you need to step out, get a breath of fresh air, it is completely understandable. The most important thing to us is that you all feel safe and comfortable during this conversation. I organized this event because I remember what it felt like to be at the darkest depths of human despair. To be completely alone in that ever expansive darkness, it's terrifying. The goal of today's event is to shine a light in that abyss, to reach out and let someone know that they aren't alone. Although you may have not experienced the same exact things I did, it's still important to support one another as well. It's a hard topic to talk about, but I hope you all at least learn one thing about yourselves and mental health as a whole. Recently, mental health has gotten a tremendous amount of support and awareness within our society and our community. Unfortunately, it has gone worse within. I can talk about statistics such as how from March 2020 to October 2020, mental health related emergency department visits increased 24% for children ages 5 to 11. For those ages 12 to 17, it was 31%. I could also talk about how the current ratio of school psychologists to students is 1,000 to 1. One school psychologist for every 1,000 students. But I think we've heard these statistics before. Instead, I'm going to do something that I love doing, and that is I'm going to talk about myself. So, get your tissue. So I think mental health is a pretty complicated topic. You can talk a lot about mental health, and when people do it, I think most of them start with their childhood. Looking back, I was a pretty imaginative kid. I was very creative. I specifically remember coming up with these crazy scenarios in my head before kindergarten instead of falling asleep like I should have. And I think I would go on these amazing adventures. One day I was in space fighting aliens, the other I was a cowboy on the frontier. And no matter what, I felt like everything was possible. I felt like I could do anything. I felt like I could be anything. My imagination and creativity was my shield, my comfort, and as innocent as it sounds, my best friend. With it, the world was magical because I could make it magical with my perspective. And because of this, I developed a very playful and carefree personality. And because of that, I didn't really excel in academics. I would much rather play at home instead of doing multiplication tables or those one sentence writing assignments we all got in second grade. And it's important to note that I wasn't failing by any means, but I wasn't exceptional either. However, my sister was on top of it. She did her assignments, she got straight A's, and she had an amazing work ethic. Intentional or not, unfortunately, I was compared to her a lot from my family, my teachers, and eventually myself. Why can't you get grades like her? You need to be more responsible, like her sister. You play around too much. Look at your sister. Who here has heard things like that? Who here has been compared like that? If you have, you know it adds up a lot. My marker of success was no longer how happy I was, or if I succeeded in the day's journey. Anyways, so as I was being compared, my marker of success was no longer how happy I was or if I was successful in the day's journey. Rather, it was now my own system, who I loved and I still love very much. It started with academics, but I think it slowly spread to everything else in my life as I grew up and I started to hit middle school. Everything became a number, a quantifiable measure of success. Friends, Instagram followers, grades, personality, how many friends I had, how many people I spoke with that day. It was all a number that I counted. And at the end of the day, the number wasn't enough. I was a failure because someone else was better than me. The only way of achieving success to me was to get something else, something someone else had. I could never accept being myself because my insecurities led me to believe I was never at the brink of success. It was around seventh grade when this perspective really took a grasp on my life. Before then, it was hidden below distractions and games, video games, my playful personality. I was this really funny kid. And before middle school, I could distract myself with that. I was popular, I had a lot of friends, and I had these people that would go along in my crazy adventures with me, you know? And it made me happy. I was surrounded by people that made me happy. And it felt good to be a part of people's lives, and it felt even better that people were a part of mine. Looking back, I distinctly remember this memory of mine. I'm not sure if in elementary school, those in high school now we had this really weird Pokemon phase where everyone had Pokemon cards, and I collected a lot of them, and I traded up for really rare and really valuable Pokemon cards. And eventually, I was the only one in the entire school that had this one copy of a Pokemon, and I think it was Charizard or one of those. And the point is, I had the only copy, and I was known for it. I was a kid. I was known as a Charizard kid or something like that. And I didn't care about the card. I cared about how people saw me. And I felt special. I felt like I was on top of the world. And that was a good memory. Middle school, as we all know, is a completely different setting. Cliques were formed and I lost a lot of friends. Eventually, I compared myself to everyone else, not just my sister. Every single person I interacted with, I tried to see what they had that I didn't. And I would hate myself for not having it. Because it was just another confirmed failure in a long, long line of failures. This self-loathing became astronomically high, and I stopped knowing how to interact with others because of this mindset. I projected my self-hatred onto the world. I hated the people that I hated the fact that people had friends. I hated the fact that people were better, and I hated the fact that I couldn't be better. Because of this, I saw validation in unhealthy ways. I didn't know how to talk to others, so I opted to make fun of myself because that was the only way I thought I could bring anything positive to other people's lives. They laughed at me, sure, but they laughed. They smiled at me. I was able to bring something to the table. I made friends who liked my jokes and my presence, and I remember one of the popular kids saying how I was really funny, that I had something that no one else had, and that I should be proud of it. But not everyone treated me like this. Eventually, people began to bully me. And why wouldn't they? I was this awkward kid who made horrible jokes of self-deprecation and dark humor, and that made me a target. People kept me around for laughs. I sat at lunch tables to be, entertainment, but I didn't go to them all. I didn't go to birthday parties. That was who I was. I remember one day in 8th grade, when my table in English class had this conversation about something. I don't know what, but what I do remember is what I saw. And I saw smiles and laughing. They seemed very happy. You'll imagine there's this laughter and a sense of genuine connection. something I believed at the time I didn't really have with anyone. A realization came over me that I probably would never have. I didn't know how. I realized that I was known as this self-deprecating, depressed class clown. And because of that, I wouldn't really have real friendships or family connections. And most of all, I wouldn't be like everyone else. As I was having this realization, I thought of why I was feeling this way. I had a lot of negative thoughts and feelings during this time, but one that still sticks to me today is how useless I felt during a test in that class. My friend, she got a C, and that wasn't enough for her. She was crying, hid in arms, and her friend, he put his hand on her shoulder and was comforting her. And I just stood there. Because the only thing that came to my mind were inappropriate jokes that didn't quite fit the situation. And I realized that despite my ability to make people laugh and smile, I couldn't connect with her. I couldn't support her. Not in the way I longed for. And I convinced myself that I would always be like this. For the next part of the story, I'm going to say a trigger warning for self-harm and suicide. After that day in 8th grade, I had this sense of extreme failure and hopelessness that I would never get out of this rut I'd done myself in. And I felt like I needed to punish myself. I came home that day, I grabbed a pair of scissors and I cut myself for the very first time. I was only 13. I received a sense of self-control from self-harm. If I felt like I couldn't succeed anywhere else in my life, at least I had the ability to punish myself for my failures. I would use this coping mechanism well into my high school years, and when it got really bad, I would attempt suicide. I didn't plan on making it to high school, much less graduating. I can imagine a future where living and fighting my depression was worth it. And one day, this mindset eventually reached its climax. I can't do anything right. Those are the words I whispered to myself as I was crying in my mother's arms after a suicide attempt. It wasn't the first time I attempted, but it was the first time I talked to someone to say it was intense is a massive understatement. After that conversation, I got help. I got diagnosed with major depressive disorder, and I am now medicated on antidepressants. Through therapy, I have learned to lean on others when I need support, and that I'm valued and loved. And although I'm definitely still on the path of recovery, I'd say that things have gotten better since that day last month. So how am I saying my story? And despite all the terrible things that have happened, I still persevered. I could talk about a lot of things, me finding purpose, having a strong determination to fight against my mental illness, could be inspirational, and quite easy to talk about. I didn't want to talk. However, I'm not aware. The real reason is convoluted, confusing, and overall very hard to talk about. But that is what mental health is. That is what mental illness is. No one knows the full extent of it other than the person who was affected. So I'm going to take a shot at it. Here goes. Love. At the time of writing this, I'm a little grossed out. By the way I said it, I'm sure you can feel that I'm still a little grossed out. It's a very common theme. We've all heard about it. We've done book reports, Roman together. And during my mental health journey, every single time I heard that word and that theme as a whole, I rolled my eyes and I stopped mentally. I thought about how the person saying that I was loved could never understand that they are wrong for thinking that I had value or worth. But as cliche as it is, it's true. You are loved and you are valued. At the peak of my depression, junior year, emotions weren't really something I was concerned with. I shut myself off from the world and I didn't really feel anything. I stopped putting value in things, work, school, people, relationships, you name it, I didn't care about. It was a very dark time for me. Even after I spoke with my family about it, I still felt lost in my own mind. I didn't know what to do. I kept on thinking how anyone could love a depressed boy who didn't know how to talk to people. Those thoughts pushed those who wanted to be there for me, those that wanted to help away. Fortunately, two close friends of mine continued to bother me. As I shut myself off in my room, at least twice a week, these two would drag me out of my house to go eat, go to grad parties, whatever. At the time, I really hated it. I just wanted to sleep, be a general shut-in. But looking back, I realized something now. After it was known that I had depression, they came over, these two friends of mine, and hang out and or bother me out of sleeping. And the first time they came over, they chose a pretty bad time. And for context, this was the first time I saw these two after months of not seeing them due to COVID and my depression. And when they came over for the first time, I was having an online therapy session. It was 3 hours full. I was 1 hour in. So they came over, and you can't really leave a therapy session. So I had 2 hours left. I couldn't really come out and see them. I expected them to. I wanted them to, because it's very hard facing people you love in a state of mental despair. I was really bad. I didn't shower. I didn't brush my teeth. I barely ate. It was hot. I was gross. And I didn't want them to see that. I didn't want them to be disappointed. And I didn't want them to hate me. They didn't leave. They stayed in the backyard and waited. Talked to my dad in the meantime. And after I came out and gave some very awkward hugs, we caught up. It was normal, like nothing was different. I was hanging out, and as we sat on my swimming bench in the backyard and we just enjoyed each other's presence, I realized that was good. In the past 6 years, I've been hurt a lot by others and myself. A lot of that time was spent alone, depressed, anxious. The childlike magic that we saw in the world faded, but it was never defined. As in that moment under the summer sky, I saw magic, a spark of magic. I didn't have this twisted self-image of myself. Rather, I saw myself as someone who's loved. I had this realization that I, of all people, can be loved, and I could be loved not despite my faults, but because of them. I have those two friends to thank for me being alive today. I would be here on this realization. I wish I could talk about how I developed self-esteem. I wish I could talk about how I overcame my depression, turned my life around, and that I'm happy. But I can't. I still go to therapy every single Monday, 5:30 to 7:30. I still have those terrible days. And I am emotionally still on my mental health. So what was the point? Why am I up here? To fight no matter what? To know that we are loved and valued, that we are our own worst critics. What quote is Nguyen going to finish this speech off with? Because I don't know. I just turned 18 2 months ago. I got my driver's license. Last week they got the sex wrong. And I am still learning. I cannot and should not pretend my story of the lesson I am apply to everyone here, because it doesn't. Mental illness isn't a cut or a cold. I can't provide a cure that's for everyone. Everyone struggles differently, with different struggles comes different solutions. There's no band-aid that I can buy at CVS for depression. I can't give you a brand of pills that fixes insecurity. There's no skincare routine that stops body dysmorphia. It is for this very reason that mental health is so difficult to address and talk about. Solutions aren't concrete and they're attainable. The person who opens the door to a healthy mind is you. At the end of the day, it's you. Sure, we have loved ones and resources available to help us, but it's us who are tasked with pushing open that door. And I am not sure about you, but that process scares me. That there is no tried and true truth, and we're the ones that have to find it for ourselves. But what I can say is to believe in magic. What does that mean? I think everyone has some form of it themselves. It could be a person, a feeling of purpose, a Spotify song you really love, a memory we look back on with fond eyes. And it can't be put into words. I wish I could, but I can't. My spark in magic is people. As much as I hate it sometimes, I love people. They're interesting. How we communicate with each other, how we bond and share experiences, how we fight. All of it. I really love people because I personally believe that people are good. And I've come to love that about myself. That's the extent I can just start with. Whatever it is, know that you have that spark of magic. That there is something out there waiting for you to discover within yourself and fall in love with. Once you do, you need to hold on to it like gold. Keep it with you for the good days and the bad, cherish it. Once you learn how to hold on to it, you can learn to love yourself. Not just for your good traits, but all of you. And when I say all, I mean all, everything. Your lack, your personality, your body, all of it. That's a tall order. It's very hard to do that. It's very hard to ask that. But, and no one is without flaws. Sometimes the person that sees the most flaws within us is us. It's hard to love ourselves when sometimes our mind is telling us we aren't worthy of it. But whenever those thoughts come, I urge you to find that piece of magic within you and tell yourself that this is what makes you worthy. That you can and should love yourself because of your flaws. Without them, you aren't you, and your very existence is nothing short of a miracle. No matter how hard it gets, how low you feel, you have something that no one else has. That's fucking magic. You are loved, you are valued, and you are not a burden. When things get rough, remember that stuff. Realize that people around you love you for that very reason. It's very hard to believe that sometimes. I get that. But trust me, they do. The world is tough, especially recently. Gas prices, and it can feel suffocating. Sometimes we can't weather the storm by ourselves. That's okay. Reach out and ask for help. Anyone, friends, family, anyone. And while you do that, reach out with full knowledge that you are loved for that piece of magic within you. Having these issues doesn't make you weak or hurted, it just makes you human. That's the point of my story. Like I said, it's not very concrete. And what it means to me might not be what it means to you. But that's okay. It's a lot. If I want you all to take at least one thing away from this, it's that you are nothing less than magic. Thank you.